And welcome back to Twin Flicks, where we always here celebrating the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media with you. Alright, so we're going to dive in and talk about what the title of this video discusses, and that is the 4K UHD of Roadhouse. This is a Vinegar Syndrome Ultra Edition. And if you haven't seen the video yet already, I recommend checking it out because this came from a viewer, Jesse, and he sent a note to me. It was kind of a hard video to get through because he talks about that his dad passed away last year, and my dad also passed away last year. And it was a really sweet note that he sent me. So yeah, check out that video. I also did a detailed unboxing with that video too, if you want to check that out. Now in the 80s, Patrick Swayze, he had it all. He had the looks, the moves, came from a respected family, a sculpted, chiseled physique of a god, dance moves that just wouldn't quit, a true ladies' man, a singing voice of an angel, a man's man of manliness, but with a sensitive side. Women loved him and men wanted to be him. However, he wanted to make a true name for himself in the business and have value other than just being a pretty face on the screen. And so he started looking for more dramatic roles, working with A-list, high-profile, serious directors like Francis Ford Coppola with The Outsiders. He went on to make Uncommon Valor, Red Dawn. But it wasn't until 1987 when he said those famous words.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Dirty Dancing just blew up his career straight into stardom, and he quickly became an A-list leading man with movies such as Ghost, Point Break, City of Joy, and many others. In 1989, he came on board a smaller, I want to say an indie-type film called Roadhouse. And Roadhouse was a movie, at the time you either loved it or you hated it. And during its release, a lot of critics hated this movie. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, saying that it leaves reality and logic so far out the window that the movie becomes completely preposterous. It was up for 6 Razzie Awards, including Worst Actor and Picture. But now, 30 years later, as with most movies, time becomes its friend, with a new generation finding the movie. And I want to say over the past 15, maybe 10 years, it's really blown up. In fact, it's now listed in the 100 greatest bad movies you have to see before you die list. I mean, who doesn't love watching Patrick Swayze giving roundhouse kicks to the face, ripping out throats, and of course, making sweet, sweet love? And that's just on a Tuesday. The rest of the time, he's doing this. And to celebrate its popularity, in 2016, Shout Factory released this Blu-ray with a 2K scan sourced from the intro-positive film Elements. And it was a decent transfer, but it still had its fair share of problems that a lot of fans complained about. 6 years later, Vinegar Syndrome steps in and says, "Hold my beer." And if you know Vinegar Syndrome, then you know they always put in their work into all their releases. They didn't just go the same route that Shout Factory went, sourcing it from the interpositive elements or sourcing it from a 2K scan. They don't play that game. No, when Vinegar Syndrome restores a movie, they do it right. Vinegar Syndrome gained access to the original 35mm negative, giving the film a full 4K restoration. So no, this is not sourced from the elements like the Shout Factory edition was. And because of that, we now have a true native 4K DI with HDR10 plus grading. Unfortunately, no Dolby Vision with this one. Also, the image was properly reframed to its original aspect ratio of 240:1, when previous releases, including this one right here, had it framed at 235:1. And Roadhouse makes the 5th entry in Vinegar Syndrome's Ultra line, which started with Beastmaster. And last year, my 2 favorite top 10 UHD titles, which was Cloak and Dagger and the 70s hard-hitting exploitation movie Thriller: A Cruel Picture. And with each of these Ultra releases comes with new artwork, a hard sturdy box, and loaded with bonus material. And Roadhouse is no exception. This is absolutely a beautiful box set, loaded with 11 hours of bonus material that I'm going to list at the end of this review. So let's get started and compare the differences here and the improvements between the 2016 Blu-ray and Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD. And as usual, I have screenshots. So you compare the improvements and differences for yourself. Let's get to it. Now, even though the Shout Factory 2016 Blu-ray was at the time the best it's ever looked on home media, it still had its problems. The Blu-ray suffered from black level issues, going into some crush, or blacks looking slightly grayish. Most notably, the image pushed blues much harder, while also pulling back the reins on the reds, making the reds look somewhat dull or faded. And skin tones either looked too hot or pale, depending on the scene. And with this 4K, that Blu-ray takes a roundhouse kick to the nuts and finally fixes all the issues the Blu-ray had, and it's honestly a beautiful sight to see. Color reproduction looks truer and more faithful, giving much more lifelike image. The HDR10 Plus grading really honestly puts its work in with a wider color gamut where primary colors have a very nice pop to them. Blues are now more natural and deeper. Reds are no longer too hot or too dull or faded. Instead, we now have rich ruby, cherry, or crimson reds. The bar lighting, especially the neon signs, ignite the screen with hot pinks, reds, and yellows, along with more lifelike browns to wood. We now have a truer, more lifelike presence in the bar now that's very active. And skin tones are now fixed, giving warmer, natural, lifelike tones instead of the pale or too hot tones on the Blu-ray. Highlights are better, giving brighter sunlight and hotter bar lights that gives the image a brighter and richer appearance. The image has an overall sense of lifelike color and depth, from the smoky bar interiors to exterior shots with the bright sunny landscapes of Jasper, Missouri. On the farm, greenery is lush and full. You can see all the foliage. Hay has a nice tan look to it. Overall, there's just a whole new life to the color palette that I've never seen before on any home media release. Black levels are incredible, with the image displaying inky deep blacks with zero hint of crush or any kind of gray area. Shadows are velvety black and clean, giving the image much needed depth and dimensionality than it ever had before. Whites are bright and crisp without any blooming issues or any blown out, which is something the Blu-rays, both of them, always struggled with. Now, a very nice reference point with this 4K is with the higher resolution and a beautiful cleanup job, giving us a razor-sharp image that never looks artificially sharpened, and creates strong visible details and finer details, offering cleaner lines, also better textures, such as with facial close-ups, where we can now make out all the lines, imperfections, beads of sweat, facial hair, are all more revealing. Now, going back to the finer details, it's a huge standout with this UHD, such as the walls in the bar, where we can now clearly make out all the aged wood, the wood grain with posts and tables. We can also now visibly see all the carvings and scratches on walls or posts, even down to the tiniest nick. The late 80s fashion are also on full display here, seeing all the patterns, colors, and stitching. And another very nice reference point is the overall image stability is absolutely rock solid, which was a big problem on both the earlier Blu-ray and the 2016 Blu-ray. Now say goodbye to all the frame judder, instability with titles and optical transitions. Now, both the earlier and the 2016 Blu-ray always dealt with a muddy or noisy grain structure. This 4K, we now have very fine grain structure that's fully intact, no DNR scrubbing or muddiness to be found, and it's taken from the original 35mm negative, giving the image a beautiful cinematic appearance. I also found the bitrate is in the mid to high 80s, and a couple times even going to the point in the 90s, which translates into a near perfect job of getting the film onto this triple layered 100GB disc with absolutely zero instances of compression anomalies or encoding issues. I give huge props to Vinegar Syndrome. We finally have Roadhouse how it was meant to be seen, and it is gorgeous. Now, as far as the audio, Vinegar Syndrome decided to stay with a lossless DTS HD 5.1 and an original stereo track instead of springing for a new Atmos mix, which I was a little disappointed by. But both the 5.1 or stereo options are still solid tracks to choose from. But if you're listening to this on your home theater, you absolutely have to stick with the 5.1 track. The bar fights and action sequences sound fantastic and lively, with plenty of activity in the surround channels. The rock music in the bar, especially from the Jeff Healey Band, delivers with dynamic range and presence. Dialogue is crystal clear, without any issues or the music or sound effects drowning out the dialogue. Alright, so my score for Vinegar Syndrome's 4K UHD presentation of Roadhouse. The video, I'm giving it a resounding 5 out of 5. The audio, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. If you have the earlier Blu-ray or the Shout Factory 2016 Blu-ray, ditch that sucker, do a roundhouse kick to the Blu-ray and throw it out the window and pick this 4K UHD up. It is well worth the upgrade. So head over to the comments section and please let me know, when you compare the differences here between the two formats, the Blu-ray and the 4K, which do you think looks better? Let me know over in the comments. Well, if you made it this far in the video, then obviously you want to hear the bonus features. And the bonus features does offer both archival and new features, but it's really the new 2022 interviews and retrospectives that are the main reason I dig into the content. The features are also spread over 3 discs. So we have 2 audio commentary tracks, one with director Rowdy Harrington and the second with filmmaker Kevin Smith. It has a handful of new interviews with cast and crew, including the stunt choreographer. It was just a blast hearing them recount their experiences shooting the movie and all the chaos that went behind the scenes, and also talking about Patrick Swayze. A feature-length documentary on the film, a conversation with director Rowdy Harrington. We also have the stunts of Roadhouse, talking with the stunt coordinator, all about the music of Roadhouse, a very nice featurette of remembering Patrick Swayze, and a couple behind the scenes and on the set featurettes. And of course, no bonus material is complete without a press kit, including trailers, TV spots, and teasers and photos. Alright, well, thanks for tuning in and joining me for a few minutes here on Roadhouse, the 4K UHD, and comparing it to the Blu-ray. As always, keep physical media alive, and I'll see you next time.